to the Chiro Business Mojo podcast, where we deconstruct the methods, marketing, and mindset of successful business people and chiropractors from around the world. And now your host, Dr. Richard Day.
Yes, I am Dr. Richard Day, and this is the Chiro Business Mojo podcast. Thanks again for spending some of your day with me. Well, I am so excited today because this is our 50th show. It has gotten here so quickly. So I was sitting here thinking, what should I talk about for show number 50? And I thought, boom, it has been 50 episodes. I've had the pleasure and honor of speaking to a lot of people with a lot of knowledge. Let's do a recap of really what we've learned so far, at least what I've learned so far. So I went back and I listened to a bunch of the episodes, everything we've done from the start up until now, and made some notes on it. And I really came away with something in thinking back to when my wife and I were talking about starting this podcast. Now, we had originally planned for it to begin June 1st. And something happened. What that was an associate put in his notice that works for us. And suddenly we had to get that figured out. We had to come up with a plan for what we were going to do to get that person replaced. We didn't have much time to get that done, but that had to take priority. So that pushed the whole podcast back. Plus, we had a vacation planned around that same time too, so we had to go on our vacation at a time when we really should not have been taking a vacation, but we didn't want to lose our money we had put down and all of that stuff. So we were actually on vacation saying, well, the podcast is not going to launch on June 1st like we had planned. We carved out a plan and decided to go forward with it, but we knew that we had to put it on the back burner for a while. So eventually we got everything under control with a new associate, and we were able to turn our attention back to the podcast. And we ended up launching July 18th. So it took a while to really get back on our feet. And so thinking about all of this, I think there's a really great lesson there. And that is, things don't always go the way you planned. I mean, isn't that the truth? The best laid plans of mice and men. I mean, this is not a new concept, but what a reminder it was for me. And that lesson is this, and I'm going to credit my wife at this. These aren't her words, but this is her philosophy, and it's something I've really learned from her. And I sat down today to write this out so that I could share it with you. And it's that life is like a river, and it has currents. Sometimes you'll get swept somewhere you weren't planning on going. So get good at staying upright and navigating the current. And I think that is, to me, that's really good advice, because all the time I can look back at my career and my life and my first marriage, and now I'm on my second one. I never planned on a divorce. I didn't plan on becoming a chiropractor when I was 20 or 25 or even 30. These things just unfolded. And what my wife is talking about is riding the wave. Get good at navigating and riding that wave, and be okay with where it's taking you. Now, the naysayer in me says, well, yeah, but shouldn't I make plans, and shouldn't I establish goals and all of that stuff? And if someone pushes me this way, shouldn't I just push back? Well, sometimes that's true. You should always have goals. But what I've learned to do is make them a bit more general. It needed to be okay that I was going to start on July 18th. Yeah, in a perfect world, it would have been awesome to start on June 1st. But honestly, the wave came up and knocked me down. So I've learned to get good at navigating those waves, getting back upright, and going with that current. So let's get to it. Let's talk about some of the things, what I think are the high points that I've learned from the guests that we've had. Dr. Michelle Robin joined us, and she has a podcast called Small Changes, Big Shifts. Really great stuff. You should check it out. It's more directed at patients, but she has really great authors on there and all kinds of guests who have a lot of good information to share, things that I've shared with my family and with my patients. And my big takeaway from her was she always treats anyone who walks in her doors as if they have a little sign on their head that says MMFI, make me feel important. I think that is a very important thing for us to never lose perspective of. We are all a little bit selfish at heart. We always really want to feel important. We want to feel valued. And if anyone's walking into our office and they're in pain, they really want someone who can help them get out of pain and to listen to what's going on with their condition. This is a great way to approach every patient that walks in. Make them feel important. Then we had Jackie Wechter on the program, and if you don't remember, she runs blissfulhoneymoons.com. Well, what can we learn from a travel agent? I mean, we're chiropractors. Well, there was a whole lot. The great advice I think she shared with us was that you have to provide a great experience for your customer from beginning to end. That's true in her business. It's very true in our business. Every encounter, beginning with your sign, your website, your front desk staff, your office, how it presents, how their interaction is with you, your tableside manner, the care that they're given, all of it really needs to be top notch. That is going to really go back to what Dr. Robbins said, make them feel important. What better way to make someone feel important than to give them such a great experience when they come in, a personalized experience. We had Dr. Lawrence Tam on the show. He's with drivingyourpractice.com. And what he said was, it doesn't matter what anyone says about you. It's what you say about you that controls your destiny. And that's huge. I think he's talking about your internal dialogue. We all have it. It's that little voice in our head that we hear talking. And sometimes it can say, you're not good enough, you're not worthy, whatever it is telling you. Ultimately is a lot more destructive to us personally and professionally than anything anybody else says about us. And, so get right with yourself. That was my takeaway. Work on that voice in yourself and change what it is saying. We had Bo Pierce on the show. He is founder of Circle of Docs. And he had a lot of great things to share with us. His perspective, I think, is really wise beyond his years. And he had a lot of great things to say. The one that I remember is he said that a rising tide raises all boats. And I liked it because he didn't originate that. That's not his quote, but it's completely true. Running a couple of offices like we do, we go in there and we try to create a rising tide. And what ends up happening is that lifts everyone up. I used to play in a band, and I can tell you that when we had a really energetic front man, it lifted everyone's performance on stage. It really made us, we got into it, and it was a big deal. And then when we had a different lead singer that didn't have as much energy, it just kind of brought everyone down. So excitement and success and energy and enthusiasm and positive vibes, all of that stuff rubs off on everybody. And if someone or something or whatever it is can bring that into your office, that's going to lift up everyone, including the patients. And Dr. Pierce said something else as well. This is not related, but it was just a piece of advice he would give really for new docs out there. But the more I thought about it for this show, there's no reason why you couldn't do this as an experienced doc either. And that is to go shadow at least 20 chiropractors. Now, if you're a new doc, the idea behind that is you're going to get out there. You really want to figure out who you are as a doctor and how you're going to connect to your patients as a doctor. And so by being exposed to these different people with different styles, you can really figure out what you vibe with or relate to and maybe go that direction. But if you are lost in practice or stuck in practice and looking for a new direction, that might also be a great way to go out there and see what other people are doing. Now, I can tell you, if the guy's down the street, he may not be so excited to have you come shadow him for a day because he's going to look at you as competition. So take a road trip or go to the other side of town or book a flight to some other town and do some pre-screening ahead of time, check into these people and line them up and maybe make a couple of days out of it to really just go see what other people are doing and what you don't know about. I had a biochemistry professor when I was at Cleveland Chiropractic who said, basically, you don't know what you don't know. He's from Venezuela, so that's my Venezuelan accent. But anyhow, you don't know what you don't know. And if you don't know what direction you should go look at some other directions. I talked a little about Tony Robbins and the documentary about him that's currently on Netflix called I Am Not Your Guru. There are a lot of things that he said in that documentary, but one that I really liked was that life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us. And I tie this back to that current I was telling you about earlier, that sometimes shit just happens. But take a 30,000 or 50,000 foot view of your life and kind of sit back as an observer and look that it's happening for us. It's not happening to us. What doors did that open up? How will you flip and roll to accommodate for this thing that life served up and gave you? It's such a powerful message. There's so little we can control in life. It all comes down to how we handle and deal with things that happen to us. But remembering that it didn't happen to us, it happened for us. And I shared my thoughts with you about Seth Godin's book, Tribes. And the biggest takeaway that I want to touch on again is that people are tribal and that people are looking to belong to something. So create a tribe, if you will, a community that loves you, your rabid fans who love you as a chiropractor. They may not love the guy down the street because they love you. And that's who you play to. That's who you give your best energy to. And that's how you really build something that has synergy. I spoke with Brian Beaver, and he's the former CEO of Carter Energy. This is a petroleum company. And I really love talking to people who are non-chiropractors because they bring such a fresh perspective to just being success and running companies. And in this case, it was a $1.8 billion company. That's what he grew it to when he left. So I don't know of any $1.8 billion chiropractic practices, but the lessons and the things he had to say were all great advice that we can take running our businesses on a much smaller level and apply. But one of them was real easy. And what he said is become a good listener. And he said as sort of a type A personality and CEO that he was and very driven person who worked, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. He wasn't used to doing the listening. He was used to doing the talking. And that by being a better listener, especially when he got the job of CEO and ended up buying the company, it's a skill he had to teach himself. And listening is so key for us. Remember, again, if patients are coming in and they want you to make them feel important, like Dr. Robbins said, that starts with listening to them and being a good listener. And I'm guilty of this. I'm so excited to share with you everything I know about chiropractic. I'm so excited to tell you all of the success I've had in chiropractic. I want to talk, but that's not where it's at. I'm working on becoming a better listener, and I think it's a great piece of advice. And if you've got employees, be a better listener for them. Next up, we talked with Dr. Jeffrey Langmaid of the Evidence-Based Chiropractor. And what he does is he helps chiropractors approach medical doctors and partner with them. Well, what do they want to hear? You need to present them with a message of how you can help them with their patients. And a great example of that are patients that have chronic low back pain. They don't really like those cases. There's not a whole lot they can do for those folks. And guess what? If they've had a heart event, a myocardial infarct or something like that, they cannot take NSAIDs. They can't be prescribed to them. I can tell you that I've worked with orthopedic surgeons who know that that person's not ready for surgery, and they're looking for what can we do with this person? Who can they refer to? So if you want to partner with medical doctors, you need to be able to go in there and have that conversation and talk about what it is you can do for them. The other part of that is you need to be very professional in your interaction with them by sending them case notes. Put together competent, well-written case notes and keep them informed of that patient's progress if they've referred that patient to you. We had Dr. Danny DeRuiter on the show, and he's a chiropractor and a social media guru. He shared some things that I remember. He said, when you're making posts on social media, it shouldn't be all about chiropractic. Patients want to know who you are, about your kids, your pets, your life, and this really helps to build rapport. And it's true. People don't love to click on things about migraine headaches and low back pain. They don't really care a whole lot about the power of chiropractic in terms of what you're tweeting. And not that you shouldn't put it out there, you should. But you get a lot more engagement from pictures of your family, your life, a great restaurant that's local that you went to nearby. So don't forget to add that to whatever it is you're putting out there. We also had Louis Lavella on the show. He's a personal brand strategist and a social media expert as well. And Louis says you want to market the authentic you, your personal brand. And so this really coincides with what Dr. DeRuiter was saying, where people want to see your kids and your pets and your life. They want to know, who are you as a person? This is your personal brand. He also recommends that you put yourself out there, and he recommended doing it on Facebook Live. Think about what it is you want to say. Maybe go through it a couple of times, practice it on video to see if you like it. But utilize Facebook Live to talk about things, because Facebook right now is really pushing that. They are ranking that high. They're showing it to people. So these don't have a finite shelf life. They get shared over and over and over again, and you never know who you're going to reach or when they're going to reach out to you to find out more about what you do. And then I sat down with Craig Ballantine. He's the author of The Perfect Day Formula. It's no secret that I really liked this book, and my favorite part about it were the 3 C's that came from Epictetus. This was a Greek philosopher who lived thousands of years ago. One of the things that he said is that we need to control the things that we can, cope with the things that we can't, and concentrate on what matters. And that's kind of a paraphrase of the original saying, but it pretty much nails it. Look at everything that comes your way in life and figure out if it's something you can control. And if you can't, find out how you can cope with it and then cope with it. But always be concentrating on what matters. One of the things that Craig said he doesn't engage in is really arguing of any kind. And when you look at Facebook or places like that, other social media, I see so much back and forth, especially in a political season like we're having now. People sit down and they're writing entire, college thesis arguing their point, or gun control. I've seen that one as well. Can you change those people's minds? I don't know. You can control your time though. I really like this example because it really resonates with me. I don't for 1 second engage in any of that stuff. I cannot control what anyone thinks about anything. All I can do is cope with the things that I can't control and concentrate on the things that I should be doing, that I can control, that I want for myself and my life and my family. I thought this was great advice. I wish everyone would start doing this. I think there'd be a lot less trouble in the world and arguing in general, but that's out of my control. We also had Dr. Ed Ozburn on the show, and he runs the Chiropractic Philanthropist podcast. He was a great guy to talk to. He's interviewed a lot of great folks on his podcast as well. And he had a little bit of advice. It was to establish yourself as an expert. And he recommended 2 ways of doing that. One of which you can write a book, and another way is to start a podcast. But anything that you can do that establishes yourself as an expert. Some folks do it by being, if they're into sports chiropractic, they become a team advisor, the team chiropractor. And so that helps to set them up as an expert in that particular niche. But whatever it is you end up doing, pick what resonates with you. You want to establish yourself as an expert. And I guess I would add to that, this also speaks to creating a niche. You don't want to be all things to all people. That makes it very difficult. And if you look at medicine, there isn't one kind of doctor. There are family practitioners, but they're not trying to be all things to all people. If they can't treat you, they're going to refer you to a specialist. So you're going to have oncologists and urologists and gynecologists, and there's optometrists, and there's all kinds of things. And as I've spoken with these experts, that comes through over and over. Try to really find a niche and own that niche. We spoke to Dr. Jamie Richards of Life by Design, and this is 2 things. He's got Life by Design for chiropractors, and then he's got his Life by Design centers, which are his practices, and this is a chain that he's set up. It's originated in Canada, and I think he's got 22 locations around the world now. But here's what he said. He said chiropractors are big dreamers, but they take little action. And what he recommends is that we start creating productivity systems for our practices and in our lives. And his example, the model that he uses, is he divides his week into practice days, prep days, and personal days. And on practice days, he just practices. That's all he does. He's not concerned about any other aspect of running his practice other than treating his patients and being there in that practice. Then he has prep days. During those days, he is doing only prep, and he may just sit at his desk all day working on preparing for the next day and preparing lectures and preparing advertising, marketing, all of the different hats that we wear. He's going to do some of that in the prep days, not the doctor stuff during the prep days. And then he's got his personal days. So that may be the weekends he didn't specify, but that's just for fun and relaxation and family. But he divides things up, and he has got a master plan for productivity. And one of the things he does on his prep days is he maps out to the hour everything he's going to do during those days. So if you're not currently using a system to plan your days, your weeks, and then eventually your lives, the person who is going to come out on top. Now, a lot of us focus on moms and kids. We have peds practices, and maybe that's an aspect of the overall family practice that you have. We spoke with Lisa Engel. She runs Optimum coaching, and she had some advice about how to really connect with moms. And this is something that was mentioned earlier in this podcast, but it's do less telling and more listening. And she really said, especially women, they want to be listened to. And I can tell you as a married man, that is certainly true in my relationship. We're always working on being a better listener, because I feel like that's how my wife really connects with me, is talking to me, and I need to be engaged in listening. And the other thing she recommended is that we really ask how we can help moms, to offer them some love and support. They're very busy and sometimes not getting that much sleep, and work. There's a lot that goes into being a mom. And if you can take some of that burden, even in a small way, I'll often say, how can we help you? What can we do to help you? That's going to really engage and connect with that particular type of clientele better. Now, communication is a big deal, and Bill Esteb runs Patient Media. This particular company creates posters and brochures and websites for folks, and he identified what he thought really the biggest problem right now with the marketing side of chiropractic is becoming findable in today's environment. There are so many of us out there and there's a lot of noise. So you need to differentiate yourself and be able to effectively communicate the benefits of whatever it is you do, the style of chiropractic that you offer. He recommends that you are patient-centric in your message. His big deal is that all of his materials that he creates comes at it from the patient's point of view. And it's really easy for us as doctors to forget about that point of view because we come at it with our own particular set of biases. His is patient-centric. So after you've differentiated yourself and explained the benefits, it is up to the customer to decide if you're good or not. And believe me, you'll know when you start looking at your bottom line and how many patients you're seeing. We chatted with Dr. John Minardi, really informative guy, heavy into the research side of what it is that we do as chiropractors. And what he said that I really remember is that research is catching up to what chiropractors have been saying all along. And his example, the one that jumped out at me, was about brain function. And that is cortisol, the stress hormone, really interferes with dopamine. And the less dopamine we have in our systems, his example is for ADHD kids, it's loss of control and movement. He said that in Parkinson's patients, same thing happens. They have very little dopamine, and so they can't control their movement. And that an adjustment, this is what the research is showing, can decrease cortisol in the blood. And as an evidence-based chiropractor, I love knowing this kind of information. I would probably lose my patience if I went into all the details of brain function and cortisol and things like that. But if I can at least tell my patients that there is scientific evidence that helps with particular conditions is going to be beneficial for my patients. We spoke to Dr. Gilles Lamarche. He's VP of Professional Relations at Life University, and he had a lot to say. But the big thing I think that was so important is that you really need to have a purpose statement to build from. And this is the premise you should move forward through in your practice and in your life. What is your purpose? You have to know the why before you know the what. We all know what we're doing, but why are we doing it? And maybe for those of us who have been in practice a while, maybe we've forgotten why. Maybe we're so caught up in compliance or treating people or listening to people who are in pain that we really forgot the why. So in part of connecting with your passion and improving and reviving and getting on the right path, maybe part of that should really be getting back in touch with the why, write out a purpose statement, and move forward from there. Also on the show, we had Dr. Steward Hoffman of ChiroSecure. And he spoke a lot about stroke and all the misinformation that is out there. He feels that it is really vital for us to educate the public on what is really going on with stroke and chiropractic. And that is that the odds are very much against it. So what he provided was a really useful informed consent form. This is what he recommends you use to go over. It's evidence-based. It's got the studies right in it. Separate the fact from the fiction so that your patients can make an informed choice about going forward with care. So after talking to all of these guests and reading and talking about the books that I've talked about, there are some big ideas that I think are my key takeaways from everything. And here they are. The first one, mindset is so important. You cannot change your actions until you change your mindset. Yeah, you can change them temporarily, but if your mindset hasn't changed, you're going to go right back to doing what it is you've always done before. You've got to really make improvements in the way you think and the way you act to make these things stick. Number 2, we need to get better as chiropractors at communicating, not just with patients, but with our staff and everyone. The key is in what we are saying and how we're saying it. If we're saying it in 5,000 words, we're talking too long and we're not listening enough. If we're saying just what we need to say in a highly effective way, we're listening more. We're taking better care of our patients. We're also seeing more patients because we're not filling up that time being in love with the sound of our own voice. Number 3, social media is a big deal. If you're not taking advantage of this right now, you are really doing yourself a disservice. It is the water cooler conversation. It is the community where things are being talked about and where things are happening. Yes, there are still the other ones out there. There are still people meeting face to face, but so much is happening online that if you are not engaging your patients or potential patients in those communities, you are doing yourself a major disservice. Well, thank you everyone who has listened to this show and made it part of their daily routine. I cannot thank you enough. It is such an honor and a privilege to speak to you 5 days a week, bringing you the best chiropractors out there, the best business people out there, the best marketers. I want to see every single one of you be successful. That is my goal. And thank you all so much for helping make this show successful.
Thanks for listening to the Chiro Business Mojo podcast at www.chirobusinessmojo.com.